everyone, and welcome to today's webinar brought to you by the Canadian Professional Sales Association and Jeff Goldstein, founder of SalesLeadersOnly.com. While Jeff is an engineer by training, he spent his entire career grinding out a sales number as VP and GM of Canadian subsidiaries of Data General, EMC, NetApp, and Beam Software. After over 25 years in technology sales leadership positions, he's decided to build a solo sales consultancy, SalesLeadersOnly.com, to share what he's learned about technology sales and help others ramp to productivity way more quickly than they could all on their own. Please note that today, all attendees have been placed on mute for the duration of the webinar and that you can ask questions at the end using the question function in your GoToWebinar dashboard. Now, without further ado, I'll hand it over to Jeff to start.
Well, thanks, Rupalyn. Real pleasure to be here. I'd like to welcome everybody and thank everybody for joining me. I appreciate everybody has a lot going on at home. You know, if you have kids at home, it's a very trying time. You know, my kids have left the nest, so it's really my wife and I and the dog. So we have it a lot easier. So thank you for joining, and I want to thank the Canadian Professional Sales Association for working with me on hosting this webinar. So my goal today, folks, is to really help you win more big deals. These are the deals that move the forecast needle. And so that's really my primary goal. In addition, I'm really going to help you inspect your sales pipelines, especially the big deals in your sales pipelines, assess the quality of your must-win sales campaigns, and coach your teams to help them either accelerate your big deals or ruthlessly qualify and not spend time on deals you can't win. So I'm going to really hope to help you think differently about how you manage the must-win sales campaigns in your funnel, especially in these difficult times. And I'm going to talk about some of my experiences in the last recessions and some of the tremendous pressure that put on sales leadership. We've got a lot of ground to cover, so I'm going to move quickly. But at the end of the session, hopefully we'll have time. I'll take some live questions. I'm also going to share some give back. So I have some things that I hope to share with you that might add value to some of the work that you're doing today. So let's jump in. And here's the agenda. So the first thing I'm going to talk about is a quick poll to see if you're in the right place. And we're going to try to engage you and keep you engaged by using some of the polling software available in the software here. So we're going to just talk quickly about whether you're in the right place. And then you're going to hear me talk a lot about inspect, assess, and coach, which I think are three critical foundational elements to help you either accelerate your deals to victory or ruthlessly qualify and not spend time on those deals you can't win. Then I'll take a minute and just introduce myself a bit more and really talk about how and why I think I can actually help you. Then we'll jump in and talk about the 5 questions you should be asking, especially today, to inspect, assess, and coach your teams around big deals. Now, when Rupalyn and I got together back in really mid-January around the 5 questions, COVID was not a thing we were dealing with. So I've added a few extra questions here that I think are particularly pertinent to those people trying to navigate the things that are going on in our customers' buying situations. So we'll talk a bit about those. And then, as I say, in the end, I'll take Q&A. Hopefully we'll have some time. And then we'll talk about some give backs that I'm going to share with you to make your life hopefully a bit easier around this big deals. So let's talk about whether you're in the right place. If you're a first line sales leader and have sales reps reporting to you, you're in the right place. If you're a second line sales leader and have sales leaders reporting to you, you're in the right place. If you're a senior sales rep looking for some fresh ideas to help you win big deals, you're in the right place. And if you're a sales team member, somebody who really contributes to the sales rep, appreciates sales reps manage an internal team of resources, they're sales leaders of their own, you're also in the right place. So what we're going to do is let's just take a quick moment here and do a quick poll to determine just give me a bit of insight into who's here, and we'll share the results hopefully on the screen here in just a moment. So there you go. If you could all just take a moment, click 1, you're probably just one of the 3, and let's see what those sales results look like.
Just give it another 30 seconds or so, Jeff.
Okay, all right. I can see the results here coming up.
Perfect. All right, so I'm just going to share the results now. Can you see them on your screen, Jeff?
Yes, I can. That's great. Thanks, Rupalyn. So there you go. 21% of you are first line sales leaders. Another 24% are second line sales leaders, 40% are reps, and 19% or 16% are others. So this is great. So I think everybody is in the right place. And really, as I say, if you're interested in winning more big deals, you're in the right place. Excellent. So a couple more questions before we get started. Are you tired of missing your forecast? Do you get last minute forecast surprises? Are you stressed when you miss your commit? And I can tell you, I was a sales leader. I was running NetApp Canada in 2008 when we had the last financial crisis. And there was tremendous stress in the system around the sales forecast until my boss, who ran the Americas, I was leading the Canadian subsidiary of NetApp Canada, and he ran the Americas. He finally said, okay, everybody, put your quota aside and tell me what you're going to be able to do. So, you know, normally we're forecasting goal, and if we're not, we're particularly stressed. He came to the realization that goal was no longer important because it was done before the crisis. It was all really around, are you in command of your business? And if you call a number, you got to hit that number. So I think we're all going to be pretty stressed right now as customers are really thinking about what projects to fund as we move forward. I'm going to talk about that in just a moment. So let's do another quick poll. Do you think business is going to get better, worse, or much worse in the next few months? Let's take a quick poll and see what you people think. And then I'll share my answer with you. I'm a little surprised so far.
Give it about 10 seconds.
Great.
All right.
Okay, let's see what the answer says. So there we go. 56% of you think business is going to get better. That's very encouraging. 36% of you think it's going to get worse, and only 9% of you think it's going to get much worse. That surprises me a bit. That's great. I think that probably reflects the fact that most of us are in sales, and by nature we view the world as glass half full. So I think there's some good optimism that things are definitely going to get better. All right. So the question is, do you have a plan? And here's my view. I think 95% of all sales leaders have no plan or process to inspect the big deals in their sales funnel, to assess the quality of their must-win sales campaigns, and to coach their teams to help them accelerate their big deals. Now, I think most sales leaders, if you think about, you know, how you got the job, most sales leaders typically get their job because they were great salespeople. So they have instinct and experience. But in my experience, most people have no plan or process to really look at the big deals in the funnel that move the forecast needle. And I'll show you the problem that I had. I was running Veeam software. You know, I left just over a year ago. And, you know, Veeam was trying to grow their business by 50% annually. We had very ambitious growth targets. We had staff to that number. And I was growing the business in Canada about 35%. And I got a call from my boss one day and said, you know, Jeff, normally 35% growth would be pretty good, but your goal is 50%. So what's going on? You're missing your number. And so it forced me, despite all of the Salesforce data I have, and Veeam had a very good implementation of Salesforce, I had more data than I could manage. I thought, you know, I'll pull out a spreadsheet. And what I did is I simply took the top 20 deals in the funnel at the beginning of the quarter. And keep in mind that in Veeam's business, there were about 1,000 transactions a quarter, ranging in size from small cloud-based subscription transactions to SMB transactions, to commercial transactions, and to enterprise transactions. So a whole mix of business in multiple segments across the country. What's interesting here, I won't take you through the gory detail, I'll show you a summary here in a moment, but of the 1,000 transactions we would do in that quarter, 47% of them were tied up in 20 deals. So 40% of the total pipeline was 20 big deals. And as you can imagine, they could really move. These big deals could really make the difference between a very successful quarter and missing the number. And here was the startling data I saw at the end of the quarter. So I took a look at the top 20 deals. It turns out, and what was driving me was my reps were saying, hey, Jeff, we're not losing business. We're not losing business, but we're not growing at 50%. So what's going on? So when you look under the covers, what I found is we were winning 5 deals for every deal we were losing. So in those top 20, we had lost 1 deal and won 5. Normally you'd go, hey, thumbs up, that's pretty good. But 44% of the deals, these are the top 20 deals, got deferred out of the quarter into next quarter. And another 25% of the big deals that the reps had forecasted and their leaders at the beginning of the quarter disappeared altogether. So this was amazing to me. I'll talk a bit about this a bit more later on. But fully 69% of all the top 20 deals that represented almost half of the funnel didn't happen when they were forecasted. And it's really hard to exceed your forecast when 70% of your big deals just don't happen. So this was a very big aha moment and led me to a lot of the inspection that I'm going to talk about here in a moment. So imagine what impact just winning 1 additional big deal per rep each quarter would have on your sales results, forecast accuracy, and income. So if you're a first line or a second line sales leader, imagine if your entire team won 1 extra big deal per quarter, what impact would that have across your organization? And here's some pretty simple math. You know, if your reps are winning 3 out of 10 big deals, they're hitting 300. And in baseball, to use a baseball analogy, which I hope will happen again sometime soon, they're hitting 300, they get into the Hall of Fame with a 300 batting average. But if you could win just 1 extra deal and win 4 deals and ruthlessly qualify out 3 big deals you have no chance of winning early in the forecast cycle, you could almost double your win rate. So 3 out of 10 is 300%, 4 out of 7 is 570%. So the whole notion of ruthlessly qualifying and taking all that time, the rep, their SE, their systems engineer, their partner, you spend on deals you can't win and applying it back into deals you could win will have a dramatic impact on your sales results. So just 1 big deal while working on less unqualified deals saves the organization tons of time and effort and actually almost doubles your hit rate. Something for everybody to think about. I was startled by that math. So let me take a moment now and just share a little bit about why I think I can help you. So as Rupalin said, I'm an engineer by training. I went to University of Waterloo in Waterloo, Ontario. I live just outside of Toronto. And while at Waterloo, I was in the co-op engineering program. I took a minor in business administration from Wilfrid Laurier University, which is just up the street from Waterloo. And I spent my last 2 work terms with IBM, one time in Toronto in the install center, one time in the branch in Kitchener. And I pretty quickly realized while I had a technical background and I liked technology, I didn't want to spend my whole career on the bench. And I thought that sales might be a much better fit. And so I decided very early on in my career to take my technical background and apply it into technology sales. So you can see I started my career with Hewlett-Packard, spent the first almost 10 years of my career with HP. I was a sales rep. I opened up the Victoria office. I then moved to take on sales responsibility and branch general management responsibility in Calgary. I then moved back to Vancouver. So I've lived in 7 Canadian cities throughout my career. I've spent the last 20 years grinding out a sales number as sales leader, so VP and general manager of Data General. Some of you may recall who DG was. They were a server and storage company, got bought by EMC. And then I left about a year after the acquisition and joined NetApp. NetApp is a data storage company, about a $6 billion company. I was VP and general manager of the Canadian operation. And while at NetApp, I helped scale the business from about 17 million and 15 people to, at our peak, 200 million and 125 people over my 15-year career at NetApp. I then thought I'd retire. But I found that after cleaning out my sock drawer for the second time, my wife thought it was time to go back. And so I took my last assignment at Veeam Software as VP and general manager at Veeam, spent about 2.5 years then until I decided to really retire for real. But I'm really too young to do nothing. And so I thought I would set up salesleadersonly.com to share a lot of what I've learned as a sales leader in the technology business in Canada. Now, because I ran the subsidiary, I was always, every quarter I was down with my boss who was in the US. And so I spent a lot of time with my peers in the US. And so I got a lot of perspective on both the US business and the international business by being part of the North American leadership team. The final thing I'll say about my career is I also eat my own dog food. And what I mean is I've done probably 3,000 forecast calls in my career. And if you think about the math, it's one call with my team, one call with my boss every week for 20 plus years. When quarters were difficult, we had more than one forecast call a week. I'm sure many of you can relate to that. But I've also done over 200 what I'll call big rock reviews, which is a little bit of what I'm going to share with you today, which was a way for me to inspect, assess, and coach the sales teams around their big deals. So I've been in the trenches, getting my hands dirty, really leading Canadian tech companies. And while a lot of my examples are technology-based, if you have large, complex deals that aren't in technology, I think a lot of what we're going to talk about today is going to apply. All right, so let's get started. So as I say, we're going to talk about the top 5 questions you should be asking, but probably aren't, to ruthlessly qualify and win more big deals. And I say 5+ because certainly with COVID, my program, Winning the Six-Figure Sale, it's a program that I teach to sales teams. It's a half-day program. There are 35 questions I take people through in the inspect, assess, and coach areas. We didn't have time for 35, but there's a few more than 5, which I think will be very useful for us as we go through the program. So inspect, assess, coach equals accelerate. So here's question number 1. Do you know the historic funnel metrics of the top 20 deals in your forecast? All right, and as I say, most of us have a CRM system, but the question is, as the quarter goes on, things move around. And what I'm really talking about, take a look at the top 20 deals at the start of the quarter. Do you know your win rate, your loss rate, your no decision rates per quarter? And as I say, when I looked at Veeam, and I looked at this over a couple of quarters, I was shocked. Win rate was pretty good. We weren't losing much. But the amount of deals that got deferred or had no decision was dramatic. And I really encourage you to take a look at your business. Reps are not too keen to throw up their hand and go, I lost that big deal that you were tracking, or the customer decided to do nothing after I spent 6 to 9 months on a sales campaign. They're not going to share that with you. But it's a little known secret. This no decision is a big issue for us. And I think as we get into COVID, I'm going to talk about this more a little bit later on, but a lot of the big deals that are sitting in your funnel that reps are convinced are going to happen are not going to happen when expected. And what I found in the last recessions was, while the VP of Finance is thinking about what projects to fund, the IT manager who already has a deal in his budget is going to find when he goes to get that money to spend, the money's not there. All right, and the trick is, how are you You know, as salespeople, we got to take the happy years off and really understand, and I'm going to give you some tools to do that, whether the deal I'm working so hard at is ever going to happen, especially in light of what's going on with COVID. And I'm going to give you some tools to try that. So question number 2 is, do you have a written plan or process to inspect, assess, and coach and accelerate the top 20 funnel deals in your funnel? And I say in and out quarter. And what I mean is, we're all, you know, especially if you work for a publicly traded company, we're very focused on deals in quarter. But by middle of the quarter, if it's a complex deal, there ain't that much you're going to do to impact that deal in quarter. And so the question is, how much time are you spending looking at the top 20 deals next quarter and really bringing them forward, reviewing them with your sales team, assessing the quality, coaching your teams around the deals out quarter? And my bet is most of us are focused on the here and now and aren't spending much time and don't have a process to look out quarter at their deals. And so the question I ask is, why not? And so I get all sorts of answers. One is, you know, sales leaders don't have that much discipline. They don't have much structure, process, or methodology. Because remember, nobody teaches sales leaders how to run complex sales campaigns. There's very few sales courses about this. They have instinct and experience. They've been successful, but many sales leaders are unconsciously competent and so struggle a bit to help their sales teams other than, hey, let's go in and visit customers. Often, you know, the review that goes on is, let's talk about this sales call we're going to make in the coffee shop before we get into the meeting. And the final one I got a lot from sales leaders is, I have no time. I'm busy. And sales leaders, first and second line sales leaders, as well as sales reps, are incredibly busy people. But here's an observation I have. I tell people with my process, you can inspect a big deal, do a big deal review in less than 1 hour, no matter how complex the deal is. Most sales leaders spend 55 hours a week working at their job. So that's over 200 hours a month in their role. And I asked them, what could be more important in your daily activity than taking 20% of your time? Remember, that's, you know, 20 deals at an hour each, reviewing your big deals. What could give you a bigger return on your success than spending 20% of your time talking about big deals? And often, you know, kind of leaders tilt their head and go, I never really thought about it that way. The challenge is, how do you prioritize this activity? How do you bake it into your calendar? And how do you schedule 20 big deal reviews with your team at the beginning of the quarter? And I know from experience at Veeam, I had no admin help. And my biggest challenge wasn't actually doing the reviews. My biggest challenge was getting the reviews scheduled. And then reps calling and saying, you know, that time that we had scheduled, well, it doesn't work for me. I got an important customer call. Let's reschedule. So building a cadence, an intentional and deliberate cadence about reviewing the big deals in the current quarter and the big deals out quarter is a challenge for most sales leaders. But a lot of the problem is they don't have a process to do it. They don't have a repeatable process to do that. And that's all about, you know, what I'm going to share with you today and what I share with people on my course. So what could be more important than spending 20% of your time working on the big deals in your business that move the forecast needle? My view is not much, okay? Now, could the problem be the funnel and not the forecast? So hitting the forecast is tough. I have this personal philosophy that if you need 3 deals, if you're a rep and you need 3 deals this month or this quarter to hit your number, you need 3 deals, and you only have 3 big deals in the funnel, you're going to miss your number. Because inevitably, for reasons beyond your control, something's going to happen that's not going to let you win all 3 deals. But if you have 10 deals in your funnel, if you have a big funnel and you only need 3, the best 3 are going to pop to the top, self-qualify, and you're going to hit your number. So I believe a big leading indicator for sales reps' success on any given quarter is the amount of funnel they have in their business. And so here's here's a question: are you inspecting the amount of funnel your reps? And I appreciate there's good funnel and there's bad, but overall, do you have any metric that says I can look at my reps and determine whether they have enough funnel at the start of the quarter to be successful. And so again, despite all the Salesforce reports sales ops would send me, I produced this really simple little report, and I shared this with the sales team. And all it says in blue is how much pipeline do you have at the beginning of the quarter, and what's your goal? And at Veeam, if you didn't have 2 to 4 times your goal in sales pipeline starting the quarter, you were going to miss. And it's amazing how accurate this was. Now you say, hey, Jeff, 2 to 4 times, that's quite a variance. Well, if you were an install-based rep, you could get away with closer to two times. If you were a new business rep, a hunter, you needed closer to 4 times. And you could see that those reps in red were reps I would have a conversation with the sales leader and go, I think either your district's in trouble or those reps are in trouble because they don't have enough sales pipeline to be successful. It's a very simple metric, but it's one we often don't look at. And as I say, in the deluge of data we get from Salesforce, the question really is, do your sales reps have enough sales pipeline to be successful? And I think today, a lot of the sales pipeline they went into COVID with is going to be very tough business to happen. And so if we ever needed more sales pipeline, it was right now. And I think sales pipeline, getting more sales pipeline is going to be the major challenge for sales teams for the next while, because budgets are going to be slashed, projects are going to be canceled. And as I say, in one of the questions, I'll give you some qualifying questions that help determine how you can tell whether the deal you're working so hard on is ever going to happen. I'll get there in just a moment. So let's talk about assess. So here's a question I have for sales leaders and sales reps. Can you name the top 10 steps in a complex sales campaign? Now, we're not going to do a poll, so it's a bit of a rhetorical question. Can you name the top 10 steps in a complex sales campaign? And my bet, I'll just pause for a minute, just do this in your head. How many of the top 10 steps can you actually name? All right. So here's the answer. Here's my view. And again, this is not rocket scientist. You may call this different, but these are the top 10 steps in a complex sales campaign. The first step is you got to get your deal approved. So for many of you to compete, you need big discounts or low gross margin. You need to go off either your boss or your boss's boss, or in some organizations, you got to go off to a deal desk somewhere and get them to approve what you want to go sell. So that's step one. Step two is you have to figure out how to cover all your bases in a complex sales campaign. You have to figure out who you need to see, who the decision makers are. Then you got to go and ruthlessly qualify for money. And really, is there a compelling event that's going to help the deal happen when you forecast? This is going to be a big challenge for us right now. Do people have money? I'll talk about this in a little bit. And is there a compelling event that's going to force the deal to happen? What's the solution fit? How is the customer discovering the value of your solution that helps differentiate it from your competitor? Do you have a winning sales strategy? In the tech business, there's this thing called land and expand. I get a little piece of business, the customer loves me, and I can grow from there. Versus rip and replace, which is the customer is going to remove their entire networking infrastructure and replace it. Each sales strategy will drive different behavior, and it's good to understand what sales strategy you're taking. The next one is, do you have a competitive edge in your campaign? And I'm going to talk about that in just a moment. The next one is value-added partnering. At Veeam, we ran 100% of our business with channel partners. At NetApp, it was close to 70 or 80%. So figuring out which partner to choose and how to get exchange value from your partner was an area you need to pay attention to. Thinking about customer success, okay, before the sale. So I would have reps come to me looking for deep discounts, and I'd ask them a simple question: what are you doing to ensure customer success? What about implementation training? What about implementation? What about training? What else do you need to help ensure the customer is successful after they give you the purchase order? And before we discount away all our ability to compete, let's think about high value things that might help the customer be successful after we win the deal. And then almost finally, there's negotiating the deal. How many rounds are we going to have? Are we negotiating with the IT manager, with the procurement department, with an RFP process? How will you negotiate the deal? And then finally, how will you keep track of all the action items required in a deal? And so you can see for any a complex sales campaign, there are a lot of moving parts. And whether you're in tech or in large equipment sales or in pharma, anything where there's large transactions and complex deals, there's a lot of steps. So one of the analogies I use with my sales teams is I say, hey, imagine a pilot, silverhead pilot like me, jumps into the cockpit flying between Toronto and Montreal. He doesn't look out the window and go, hey, I've been doing this for 30 years. I'm feeling good. The weather's great. Hey, stewardesses, let's lock down this thing and let's get this plane going. They don't do that. What do pilots do? They pull out a manual checklist and go step by step through their pre-flight routine so they don't miss a critical step in flying the airplane. And think about this, the pilot is only flying one airplane at a time. He's not looking at his iPhone, he's not getting text messages, he's not getting requests from his kids to bring stuff home after work. He's flying one airplane. Sales reps are running multiple sales campaigns across multiple organizations, running multiple steps. Without a process to keep track of not missing an important step, it's incredibly easy to miss steps that could sink your deal. Now, here's the next question. So as I say, the roadmap helps ensure you never miss important steps in your complex sales campaigns. Now, let me ask you this. How are you ensuring you never miss an important stakeholder in your complex sales campaign? So stakeholder, what do you mean, Jeff? So let's take a look at this. In the tech business, we have a lot of techies. We have reps who are technical. So they often run very good technical sales campaigns to the technical buyer in the campaign, talking about functionality and cost. Look how great our product is. Look how fast it is. Look how effective it is compared to our competitors at the price. But I always say in every complex sales campaign, there's a technical campaign and there's a financial or political campaign. And on the financial or political side, there's things like long-term strategy, there's relationship, there's vendor preference, there's vendor support, there's politics and brand. There are many things going on and many people will have an impact on the technical campaign other than the technical person you're selling to. So the Harvard Business Review did an interesting study. And what they came and concluded was the more decision makers there are in a large transaction, and their view is there's about 5.4, the less likely it is that the transaction will actually happen. So making sure you don't miss a stakeholder in your campaign is critically important for the deal to actually happen. Okay, so let's talk about the type of stakeholders. We're familiar with many of them. There's a technical recommender or implementer. This is often the person we're selling to. This is the person trying to evaluate our product. There's a technical decision maker, somebody who gets presented the results of all this analysis and makes a technical decision. There's an economic decision maker or a financial approver. Sometimes he's the VP of IT, but often he's not. And I can assure you right now, budgets are getting reviewed and there's going to be an additional tick box on the approval process that's going to go through finance. I can almost guarantee it. There's a coach. A coach is somebody who's going to share with you how you're being perceived in the account when you're not there. I'll come back and talk about the coach. There's a champion, somebody who's very vocal about how much he likes you. There's the fox. This is a man or woman who can change the evaluation criteria and the approval process midstream. I'll talk about that again in a moment. The fox doesn't have a title called the fox. He's often the person who enters the room. If you're presenting to a group, enters the room, he's pretty quiet, but everybody's looking at him and he has the ability to change the ground rules for your deal. There's an adversary, somebody who wants somebody else to win, and there's partners and alliance partners. So I often say when I'm doing a big review to the rep, okay, show me who you're talking to. And this is what I get. I get the org chart and I go, that doesn't tell me anything. And that doesn't tell you anything. So what I do instead is I use this thing we call the relationship map. And the relationship map, which I'm going to show you, is a fantastic tool. It tells me a tremendous amount about how wide and deep the team is selling into the account. And here's what the relationship map looks like. It includes the key decision makers. In this case, there's a technical decision maker, a technical recommender, there's a channel partner, there's an alliance partner, there's a coach, there's a fox, and there's the economic decision maker. And then there are 3 boxes under each of these main decision makers. And all I ask in box 1 is, have you or your boss met the key contact in person? How does that contact feel about your solution? Are they pro you, neutral you, against you? Are they mentoring you, or do you not know? And in the 3rd box, I just ask, is that person in the power base? Are they a decision maker? Are they a direct influencer? Are they an indirect influencer or unknown? And then I tell the rep, I ask the last question, have you identified a coach or a fox in the account? And then I ask them to complete this. It literally takes 2 minutes. So in the box, the technical decision maker, we've met him. He's pro us. He's a direct influencer. The technical recommender we met, loves our stuff. He's an indirect influencer. But the economic decision maker here, we haven't met in person. We don't know how they feel about us, and they're making the financial decision. We have an inside coach. The fox, as it turns out in this particular deal, was the VP of architecture. We haven't met him. His position relative to our solution was unknown, and he was also a key decision maker. So I very quickly looked at that and said, hey, reps, how do you feel about your deal? And after them feeling so good about their technical campaign, they realized their financial deal was in question, and there were a lot of unknowns in terms of people they needed to cover off. So the relationship map, you know, if you recall that review process, the 10 steps in a complex sales campaign, the relationship map I review very early on in the discussion with the sales rep, because I think the relationship map tells a tremendous amount about the quality of that campaign. How wide and deep is the sales team selling? Are they just selling to a technical buyer they hope has money, or are they covering all their bases in a complex sales campaign? The relationship map is a great tool to identify gaps, to keep score, and to communicate to other members on the team who we need to meet and influence. So if you're working, for example, with a channel partner, do they know the economic buyer? Have they already been selling to them? Does somebody know the VP of architecture? LinkedIn is a great tool to figure out who these people are, and asking your coach, who do I need to go meet and influence, is a very important piece. But you need some way to keep track of this, and it ain't the org chart. So the next question I would ask is, what is the compelling event that will ensure your deal closes as forecasted? Now, I have to tell you, I've heard all sorts of things from, hey, we time-stamped a deal. You know, that pricing, which is fantastic, expires at the end of the quarter. And I can tell you, based on my experience, the price you offer the customer on Friday is the price they're going to expect on Monday, irregardless of your quarter end. It is very hard to make time-stamped pricing a compelling event. If the customer is not ready to buy a limited time pricing deal, very rarely, because think about how many people have to be involved, are going to move them. All right. I was in the software business, maintenance renewals. Hey, that maintenance deal is expiring. Their maintenance is expiring. They're going to have to buy by that date. Well, it turns out the incumbent software vendor has a lot of control over what they can do about maintenance renewals. All right. So I always ask, you know, what's the compelling event? And then I ask, what happens if you miss the compelling event? And if nothing happens, it ain't that compelling. But without a compelling event, it's very hard to really know whether your deal is going to close when expected. All right. So compelling event is very important. And here's a third question I've asked, especially now around COVID. You have to ask your customer what's changed in their approval process. I'll let you think about that for a moment. Now, if you're talking to the technical recommender and you say, what's changed in the budget process? They're going to say nothing. This project was in the budget. It's been approved. And you're going to, with happy ears on, go, okay, that's all I wanted to know. When my boss asked me if I asked what's changed, I can say nothing. I can assure you, in your deals, things are changing literally as we speak around the approval process. In 2008, I was leading NetApp Canada. I was in New York City at a quarterly business review with my boss who happened to live in New York. And we had a conversation, and we brought in one of the VP of finance from one of the big brokerage firms who was a big NetApp customer. And he said, let me tell you what's going on. We are right now taking a very critical look at every project that was approved in the budget. And we are determining whether the business outcome is enough for us to go forward with the project. And in the fullness of time, we'll let the tech teams know whether their project's been approved. But in the meantime, because there's now an extra signature going on in the procurement process, deals are taking longer. They're not closing as expected. For me, I could always tell when the forecast started to get wobbly that things were getting tough in the economy. You can be sure right now, VPs of finance and CEOs of mid to large size organizations are reviewing the capital budget and really critically determining whether projects are going to be funded. So what you need to do as a sales leader and a sales rep is go back, and when the customer says nothing's changed, say, really? Nothing's changed for you? You know, there are a few organizations doing really well as a result of what's going on. Most organizations are struggling and worrying a lot about the fact that their business is down. What are they going to do to maintain profitability, especially if they're a publicly traded company? They're going to reduce expenses and they're not going to approve projects. So this is clearly something you need to do, is ask this additional question. You know, what's the compelling event? What happens is I'll miss the compelling event. And has something changed in the procurement process? Even if I've been doing business with this customer for 5 years, I'm pretty sure something is changing. So I'd ask that question. Now, as we move from inspect, assess, part of the role of sales leader is to coach their team. You know, and I always, with these big rock reviews, they were 1 hour reviews I did with the sales teams. The goal wasn't to find out what reps weren't doing. It was to help them be more successful. Now, I always said the goal of the Big Rock Review was that you would end up running a better sales campaign at the end of the hour than you did at the beginning. And especially in the tech business, we talk a lot about feeds and speeds, but don't talk a lot about what business outcomes are we expecting from our solution. And so while most reps and competitors are focused on feeds, speeds, and specs, the actual business outcome of the solution you're selling gives you far more insight into what the customer is trying to achieve, and also insight into what's compelling about why they buy. So I got this from one of my partners. It's a very interesting way to think about this problem of business needs. It's all about needs. Normally we think about needs. You know, we spend a lot of time talking about the customer's needs. Then we go right to solution, and then we go prove with evidence. The process, and the acronym is KNOWS. Think about the customer's needs. Think about the business impact, the positive impact that will come from meeting those needs. That is the motivation to move forward. And if there ever was motivation to move forward in today's economic climate, we'd want to pay attention. So it needs, outcomes, solutions, and evidence. And I would ask our sales team, what business outcomes is the customer trying to achieve with the technology? And the first time around, most reps go, I don't know. Well, I go, maybe we should go find out. And frankly, if you want to go have a conversation with a financial or economic decision maker, he's not that interested in the feeds and speeds of your solution. He's going to want to talk business, and asking him what business outcomes he's expecting from your solution will have a dramatic impact on whether you're going to do your deal or not. Then question 7, you notice there were more than 5 questions. I asked, do you have a competitive edge in your sales campaign? And reps will look at me and go, what do you mean? So I would ask these 3 questions. Do you have access to power? Meaning, can you get and talk to the people who are actually making the decision? Have you met the key decision makers in person? And do you have a coach? And are they sharing key inside information about your campaign, about how it's being perceived in the account? And so my experience is you can sometimes, if you've been doing business with an account, you can often win business without getting access to power. You know, in a large organization, you're selling into a bank, unlikely you're going to get to meet the CIO. Unlikely he's interested in your deal. And you may even win if you haven't met the key decision makers, if your recommender is strong enough. But it's very tough to win a complex sales campaign if you don't have a coach. If there isn't somebody inside the customer telling you, you know, whether your grenades are landing appropriately, telling you what your competitor is up to, telling you what their pricing looks like. You know, this is something sales reps are really good at, is developing relationships with people inside. You don't necessarily need them selling for you. You just need them to share key information about what's going on in your campaign. Because if the customer veers left and you keep going right with great speed, the gap gets wider. So I always focus on this. Do you have a coach in the account who's sharing what's going on? and the rep says no, the first thing I say is you better go off and get one. Then I ask, we're coming up to the end now, folks. I ask, what is your strategy to ensure customer success after you win the deal? Okay. What risks could cause the project to fail? So this really often gets reps to pause a little bit. And hey, all I want to do is get my purchase order. Well, you know what? Before we discount deeply and have no money left, maybe it's better to include some free training, some free implementation services, from free migration services that you can help the customer with, because once a customer is seriously considering you, they start to think about, okay, if I buy your solution, how will I implement it? How will I ensure success of my project? And you can differentiate yourself a lot from the competitor by thinking about customer success while you're still doing the deal, before you get the final purchase order, before you put the final quotation together. Think about customer success. And here's the final question I would ask you to think about. And again, this came from one of my clients. It's the look back question. I call it the critical look back question. If the prospect was to notify you today that you lost the deal, what fatal flaws in your campaign do you think they discovered that led to the loss? Now, often sales reps don't want to share this with their boss, but in a quiet moment, I would look into the mirror and go, okay, I've been running this campaign now for 3 months, for 6 months, for 9 months. Where do I stand? And if I was to lose, what are the fatal flaws that would cause me to lose? And often we know what our flaws are, because it's often very hard, to have 10 out of 10 on every part of the solution. But taking a critical look at the fatal flaws before you get the phone call will really help you think through the solution from the customer's perspective. It'll force you to take happy years off and really understand what you could do now to make sure you win the deal. So the question I always ask is, how will you address the fatal flaws now before you get the bad news phone calls? Who else could help you in your sales campaign? It might be the partner, it might be your boss, it might be your VP. Where are the gaps in your campaign, and what can you do now to fill them before the customer recognizes and they become fatal flaws? So there you have it, folks. There are the 5+ questions you should be asking, but probably aren't, to ruthlessly qualify, inspect, assess, and coach your team through big deals. Do you have funnel metrics for win-loss and no decision deals? Do you have an intentional and deliberate review process for your critical must-win sales campaigns? Can you name the top 10 steps in a complex sales campaign? How do you ensure you never miss an important step or stakeholder that could crash your deal? What's the compelling event? What happens with you if you miss it? And what's changed in the customer's procurement environment, decision approval environment today, given everything we're going through? Then what business outcomes, not feeds and speeds, but what business versus technical outcomes is the customer expecting from your solution? Do you have a competitive edge? Really meaning, do you have access to power? Have you met the people in power? And do you have a coach guiding you from the inside in your sales campaign? And then what are the fatal flaws in your sales campaign that could cause you to lose? So there we are. There we are. Inspect the funnel, assess the quality of your sales campaign, and then coach your team with an intentional and deliberate process to make sure you help them along the way identify any gaps or steps that could cause them to lose the deal. All right, I'm going to pause there now. And let's see, Rupalin, if we have any questions. We still got we've got a few minutes for questions, and then I'll talk about some of the things that I want to share with people to help them along the way. And I'll get there in a moment. But Rupalin, do we have any questions for the team?
Thank you so much, Jeff. We have a couple of questions. A lot of people are wondering if the webinar has been recorded and if it will be sent out. Yes, to let everyone know, our webinars are recorded, and for those of you who did attend today, you will be receiving a recording video of the webinar. Just give it a couple minutes for some additional questions to come through, Jeff. So the availability of your relationship map worksheet, Jeff, is this available on your website to access? Or?
I'm going to talk about it in the giveaways. Yes, I'm going to share the relationship map and the big deal roadmap. If people just shoot me, and I'll show you that slide in a moment. If you shoot me an email, I'll be very happy to send you those 2 course assets for you to use.
Thank you. A lot of questions on how we can get access to the recording of the webinar. So as mentioned, a lot of compliments on the webinar. As mentioned, this will be recorded and edited and then just sent back to those of you who have attended today in a link.
Great.
So one here, Jeff, when in the sales process should you introduce the fatal flaw question?
Well, I think you want to ask it early and often. If you ask it early, there'll be a lot of things you haven't covered. So as you build out, the steps in the sales process, the things that you want to do, you want to continue to ask yourself, kind of, what have I missed? Are there any fatal flaws the customer is kind of telling me as we go through this? So there's no specific time, but I would go early and often, because if you've identified the flaws, it's highly likely your customer has identified the flaws. And you don't want to get to the end of the roadmap and find out that there were flaws that you didn't address because you didn't think of them. So think about them, because I can assure you your customer is thinking about what's missing in your campaign.
Just waiting for additional questions to come through, Jeff. We have someone wondering if they can connect with you via email. Is that a possibility today?
Of course, I'm gonna talk about it in my last 2 slides here for sure.
Maybe, Jeff, if you'd like, we can get to the last 2 slides, and if questions come through, I can. Yep.
Perfect. So so somebody read my mind. So the big deal roadmap, is something I encourage the reps to put into their, into their portfolio when they go see customers, because they don't happen in order. You don't go from step 1 to step 10 in a serial manner. You're trying to cover many bases. You're doing many things in a sales campaign. Some of these steps your partner is going to do, some of them your boss is going to do, some of them you're going to do. So just keeping front and center what are the steps in a sales campaign that you need to cover will help ensure you never miss a step. Same thing with the relationship map. A big job of visiting the customer is to figure out how to populate the relationship map. Who are the decision makers? Who are the influencers? How do they feel about my solution? How do I get access to them? How do I get access to power? This is certainly something the rep, their boss, the partners can spend time at. So if you send me an email at jeff@salesleadersonly.com, they're small files, I'll just attach them, and I'm very happy to distribute those 2 assets to you. Okay? Now the next, sorry, Ruth, the question?
Oh, I just said that's great.
Yeah.
No questions, no further questions.
Okay. And then the next 2 asks are, I love talking to prospective customers. I love talking about this stuff. I put aside Thursday and Friday mornings to have this type of conversation. I'm very active on LinkedIn, so I put Thursday and Friday mornings aside to have LinkedIn conversations. So if you want to, reach out and book 30 minutes with me, I'll talk about how to reach me here in just a moment. I'm very happy to chat about how I might be able to help you further and really answer any questions you might have about my approach to inspect, assess, and coach your teams through big deals. My second one is, if you think that this presentation would be of value to your team, I often get asked to speak at QBRs, quarterly business reviews, sales meetings, to sales leaders, to sales reps. And, my goal is to challenge your teams to think differently about how they run their must-win sales campaigns. So again, these 2 things are free, no charge. I'm very happy to do it. And again, I would just ask you to reach out, and here's the best way to reach me. You can go to my website at salesleadersonly.com. You can reach me by email at jeff@salesleadersonly.com. I'd really encourage you to connect with me on LinkedIn. As I say, I'm very active. I post either my content or other content I've curated every day on the web. You could ring me up. And if you want to learn more about the program, so today was a bit of an introduction to a half-day training program for sales leaders, first, second line, and senior sales reps. I call it Winning the 6-Figure Sale. And this is a little taste of what we cover. As I go into a lot more depth, there's actually 35 questions I take people through in a big rock review to help inspect, assess, and coach teams to win big deals. Okay. The final thing I'm doing is I'm actually writing a book. And it's, you guessed it, it's called Winning the Six-Figure Sale. If you'd like to be notified when the book is published, turning out, I'm an engineer, I'm not a writer. So this is taking a little longer than I expected, and I have a newfound respect for authors who write books. But if you go to the website, you'll find it at salesleadersonly.com, new book notice, and you just give me your email address, pop it in, and I'll build a mailing list and let you know when the book is published. All right. So Rupalin, we're just about above at the top of the hour. Any last minute questions for me?
We've got one. I think we have room for one more, and then the
Okay.
rest, if you're okay with this, I can email them over. But I
Sure.
think this one is could be really applicable to a lot of sales professionals on the call. So when mapping your relationships and you misplace someone, or you thought someone was in another slot, how can you change the way you identify these people?
Well, this is why it's important to have, in any complex sales campaign, it's not typically just the sales rep. There's, in the technical word, there's a rep, there's a systems engineer, there's usually a channel partner manager, there's usually a channel partner in their sales team, there's your boss. And so the whole notion is to continually ask questions about, okay, who's making this decision? Who's influencing the decision? And not stop when you get one answer. Because often, depending on who you speak to, you're going to get a different answer. So this is a bit of a jigsaw puzzle. Who is the key decision maker? There's often more than one. And most people, when you ask them, are you the key decision maker, will say, yes, I am. And they'll say, don't go above my head. So the way to do this, think of it as a bicycle wheel. If you're getting all your information with one person in the hub, you should be trying to get lots of spokes into your deal, lots of views into your deal by talking to many people in the sales campaign, again, with the goal of trying to confirm that the decision makers you've identified are in fact the real decision makers. And that fox is a really important person. They're the person who can just come in at the very end and go, we're going to change. I don't like what we're doing. We're going to change the way we evaluate this deal. And they will change the whole approach and evaluation criteria. So looking for a coach and looking for a fox are two critical people that I find required, and I find often are identified when reps win large complex sales campaigns. All right. So Rupalin, we're at the top of the hour.
We're here. Thank you so much, Jeff. On behalf of the Canadian Professional Sales Association, thank you so much for being such a great host for today's webinar and for providing all of your help and contribution to the sales community. And for all of you asking about the webinar recording, yes, this will be sent out to you by tomorrow.
All right. Well, Rupalin, I want to thank you. I want to thank the Canadian Professional Association and for everybody who attended. The climbing to the top of the sales leaderboard is what gave me so much satisfaction. See our sales reps getting to the top. But getting to the top is never easy. It's just the view from the top and the view along the way can be spectacular, especially in the sales organization. So I hope to see you all at the top of your sales leaderboards. And thank you so much for joining me. Reach out. I'm easy to reach. I'm very happy to chat about this stuff. And if I can help, I'm happy to do so. Thank you, Rupalin.
Thank you so much, Jeff. Have a great day, everyone. And thank you again.
Bye now.